absolute, first primary support.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the major indexes, whether it's the S&P, the Nasdaq,
I'm going to interrupt you
Russell.
live
Yep,
here in
We
10
are we are
seconds.
live.
We're live on social media. In
We'll
10
save it for
seconds, we'll
the
be going live on the
absolutely.
radio. You'll hear a little music, and then we'll go.
here.
Knocking at the door on what I knew for sure. Blew up in my face. Woke up on the floor. Couldn't take no more. My darkest day.
That music can only mean one thing. We are live on the air with Innovative Strategies and Bill Hasse.
Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Bill.
How you doing?
I'm good. You've got a guest this morning. He's a good-looking fella.
Yeah, one of my favorite people from East Coast, all the way from New York,
New York.
and Mr. Scott Lask, and he and I always enjoy great conversations when we talk about the market, we talk about the economy, what's going on. We don't predict the future. We don't have that crystal ball, but we do like to talk about it. It's like what's going on and what's happening, because it's all over the place, right? Scott's been in
It's a
management
new world out there.
Yeah, I mean, you've had your own business, Scott. Lask Wealth Management Company for about a little over 18 years, I believe.
Right. I went independent in 2004 because I did not want to be restrained by the classic Wall Street FA model.
Right, I hear you, and I'm kind of the same pattern, but you and I are much alike in the mindset. Although we might have a little contrarian thoughts from time to time.
We're supposed to.
But you are supposed to, and typically I don't talk about all the accolades of my guests, because it's more about the person, more about who you are and what you bring to the table. And Scott, you bring so much to the table.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Bill. So do you.
Well, thank you. Let's get into it. What's going on? This market up, down, goes up 400, down 1,000, up 500.
I'll tell you what we are telling our current clients clearly, and prospective clients who now wonder what is going wrong. We are in a classic whiplash market. Okay, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, and you're going to wind up in a neck brace. And the reason is because the underlying fundamentals of the economy have shifted. When I was in undergrad, I took a geology class, and they talked to us about these tectonic plate shifts. English, when the earth moved, everything, everything shook. And I think that unfortunately, many new investors are just now realizing that the formula that was working very well for the last 10, 12 years,
yeah,
it's over.
Good point. I want to stop you there for a sec. New investors. So we have investors that could have been in this world for 20 years, consider maybe their whole career. When you're 40 years old, 42, 45 years old, and you've been in this industry for 20 years, that's your whole career. And in that whole career, the only bear market you've ever seen lasted what, 3 months?
Yeah.
2 months?
Yeah.
So, there's many, many, many people in this industry, and many, many people in the investment world, directly or indirectly, do not understand. And it'd be very, very difficult for them to understand the big shift in fundamentals that you bring up. But we're seeing it in the technicals too.
Yeah.
One
of the reasons why we are huge fans of charting is, let's say you're Goldman Sachs and I'm Morgan Stanley, and you say that let's say Tesla, it's going to go up another 40%, And then I come on CNBC or whichever platform an hour later and I say, Tesla's a dog with fleas. We wouldn't touch it. And if anything, we would short it. Well, who's right, you or me? But when you look at charts, there is no noise. It's really just a picture of the battle between supply and demand. English, who's got the ball, the sellers or the buyers? And that's why charting is so valuable.
Well, I think somebody dropped the ball and we're all scrambling looking for it and, knocking it around because it's the volatility is up.
Yeah. And, anytime that VIX, goes over 22, 20, when it gets down to 22 and starts curling up, you really need to be careful. And just, from our perspective, what we're seeing is that while 6 months ago, any dip in the market was a cause to, dollar cost average lower.
Yep.
We're now seeing these rallies as an exit point for institutions to lighten up their portfolios.
I'm agreeing with you on that, and let's let our listeners know dollar cost averaging is typical activity and strategy used when the market goes down. You buy a little bit here and a little bit lower and a little bit lower, and your average price in is then reduced. So the idea is then the market goes right back up, and you've bought in on an average lower price. And that's just the layman terms for it. It gets a little bit more technical, but a great example of dollar cost averaging is a 401k plan.
I was just going to say that's probably the only real good benefit of the 401k. I think it's a marketplace that needs to really be brought up to speed. But yeah, every month, these investors and many participants, these are not, what we would call highly experienced investors, but that's exactly what they're doing. But if you ask them to do that on their own, they wouldn't, because their emotions would be too, much in their own way.
Yeah, that's true. And the other issue then is they're in their own way because they have that emotional side that they bring to the game, right?
And let me look, between you and I, Bill, we probably have 80 plus years of financial, counseling and experience. I think the greatest tell anyone could look for is human behavior. And I'll give you some clear-cut examples. Think about the person, the guy or gal who for the last 2 years thought Bitcoin was just the biggest, folly that ever, was invented. But they're seeing all their friends making a ton of money. Of course, it's on paper, but it was 15,000, now it's 20,000, now it's 40. And at 57,000, they couldn't take it anymore, probably because they heard someone on one of the business channels go, "Oh, you got to load the boat because next stop's 100,000. It's a given," right? Which is, first off, you don't say things like that.
Those would be the people who are long at 57,000.
Right. And literally,
just bought
at 57,000, literally, if it hit that top 3 days later, it was 39,000.
Yeah.
And just a few days ago, it dropped below 28,000 for a moment. So this is human emotion, greed versus fear. They got greedy. They couldn't take watching everyone else make money. Classic sign you're near a market top. If I can, in 2007, we were out to dinner with a bunch of friends, and these were couples. We always took a house. We all went to Cape Cod, third week in July with the families. One couple would never go because they insisted we'll get a much better price on the house after Labor Day. Here it is, early 2007. They're talking about buying a $2 million house in Martha's Vineyard. Now, for folks who are not East Coasters, okay, you and I could go to Cape Cod right now and buy a really nice place, $600,000-$700,000. You can't buy a shack on Martha's Vineyard for $500,000. And I told my wife on the ride home, I said, we're near the market top. I'm going to start making the moves. Human behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, I actually, it's kind of funny because in '05, I sold my home and built a new home. So I did a very smart thing with a very dumb thing. I sold my home at the peak, and all my neighbors are like, "Why are you selling?" I said, "Because I'd been in interest rate futures for 16 years.
Hmm.
I saw what was coming." And, but I can't tell everybody that because it's just, you don't predict the future, right? We don't do that. But,
No.
um, uh, but unfortunately, I built new. And so 2 years, 3 years later, new construction was the one that get hit the hardest in that debacle and housing debacle
Right.
that we had on a percentage basis because you were overpaying to build, and then you just got crushed. But yeah, so I know that euphoria and I know that pain.
Yeah,
Um,
and the flip side of that, Bill, and I've had way too many clients who, this is why they came to me. They didn't get back in after the great, dot-com crash. They didn't get back in after the mortgage collapse. And you ask them, and they say every one of my instincts was saying, "Yeah, now's the time," because it's the classic. Everyone's running for the hills. It's blood in the streets. And
yeah.
then you probe a little deeper and you go, "Well, why didn't you pull the trigger?" And they go, "Well, because every time I got close, I just felt in the back of my mind, the second I put my money back in, someone on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange was going to scream, 'Okay, Scott's back. Drop the other shoe.'"
Well, let's go
But
back to this cryptocurrency Bitcoin thing real quick, because here's an interesting play, and this is done in all different markets, all
Mhm.
markets. Um, so a certain person comes in and makes an announcement in the public that he or she had purchased $1.5 billion of Bitcoin. All right, so building showing legitimacy, and the market rallies, and guess what? Who's selling into that rally?
Mhm.
Most likely is that person who just made that announcement, and he's walking away with $500 million inside of a week or 10 days,
Right.
and then the market collapses because there's nothing to hold it up. Right? There's a vacuum underneath because there's no more bids,
Right.
which is very common. Happens in stocks, happens in futures, options.
Well, it's the old supply and demand. In the absence of the last buyer, the sellers will appear.
Coach.
Yeah, several years ago, I heard a statement by Warren Buffett that I always kind of went with. He said, "When there's fear in the marketplace, be greedy. When
Yep.
there's greed in the marketplace, be fearful." And
Right.
that has been spot on forever. Whenever you hear, "Oh, you can never go wrong with this," uh, that's when you turn
That
around and run.
it's called the contrarian mindset.
Right.
It's a very difficult mindset to grasp and to act upon.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're right, I get it, but am I going to act on it?
Well, it's
Not with my
counterintuitive.
money.
Well, but here's the thing that I found is that, look, it's not rocket science. Most people
Right.
know what to buy, and I'm doing this with a bunch of first time investors. Their assignment was literally look in your kitchen, your medicine chest, your garage, your pocketbook, okay, your car, and pick out the 10 names that come up first, and that's your portfolio. And then they bring it and we backtrack it and they go, "Wow, you mean I could have made like 12% a year on average for the last?" Yes.
Yeah.
It's not what to buy and how much of it, it's dealing with people's perceptions and their own beliefs about money. Because I give you an example. I put every client through. I show them the emotional cycle chart, and I use emojis. And of course, everyone in a bull market confuses a good market with their own brilliance. And then, when they see their money literally vaporizing day after day after day, they panic and they sell. And that's usually when the smart money comes in because it's dirt cheap. And Bill and Coach, haven't you ever noticed that, you know, every marketplace, if they throw a sale, people line up? My market is the only market I know of that people insist not only on paying full price, but actually are willing to pay premium prices. but you throw a sale and almost no one shows up.
Well, look what we're paying for cars now. you know, we got a couple of guests. I wanted to say welcome, Boplay from Singapore.
Gary. Good morning, Gary.
We haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for listening in. And Singapore was a place where I used to have some pretty big clients when I was on the trading floors. And Sally on vacation.
Yes.
Getting up early out there in Arizona, listening in. Great.
Sally, I'm jealous.
Yeah. She's on vacation with her husband and posting some fun pictures. And thanks for that, because I haven't had one in 9 years. So
a fun picture?
A fun picture or a vacation.
Oh, okay.
But, so let's get into more about the economy. You've brought up supply and demand a couple of times here. And there's some unique things going on, I believe, with this supply-demand scenario we're in now. With the supply situation, we all know is tight, whether it's baby formula, whether it's chips for automakers and other computer equipment and whatnot. But you don't need as much demand when you have this supply issue.
No.
Right? You can have reduced demand and still have an incredible effect when you have the supply issue. Now you combine a bigger demand with the supply issue, and it really gets ugly. And I think that's kind of what we've walked into or run into or driven at high speeds into, depending upon your viewpoint. But even look at cars, they're ridiculous. If you're not paying 20, 30+% over cost, you aren't getting a car.
My son has a Honda Accord. It's a 2010. It's got, 170,000 on it. It's got some rust. It's got some dings. The radio doesn't work. The clock doesn't work. And the Blue Book value should probably come in around $1,700. You could probably get $6,000 for it from the dealer on a trade-in, because they could put $1,000 of work into it and sell the thing for $12,000.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually in the world right now. I'm trying to sell. I have a 2021 Dodge Challenger, basic GT. And I'm working to sell that, and I'm getting some calls of people saying, "Oh, you're asking way too much." I said, "I'm $5,000 below the dealership asking price." I said, "I think I'm doing you a favor here." But it's interesting the comments that you get from the different folks. But there, we know there's problems with the supply chain. There has been for a while. We don't see it in the news anymore, right? We don't see all the ships sitting offshore.
No.
And nobody working in or doing their work in the shipyards and whatnot. But it's not just that. Supply comes from manufacturing, right? So manufacturing needs parts and things to keep up, and those are way behind. I mean, we had this just-in-time scenario going on so beautifully for so many years. We've moved everything offshore to manufacture.
Never a good idea.
You and I talked about this earlier this morning. We shut down the energy in this country. I mean, hello. How do you not see how that affects everything? It takes energy to get everything to the market, right?
Let me, if I can, give your listeners a perspective that, you and I learned many, many years ago. If you look at the politics, you're just going to get into a cat fight and no one wins.
Yeah.
What smart investors, whether it's in the public markets, private markets, you're buying a business, they look at policy that's coming out of local government, state government, and the federal government, because policy is going to dictate where money is going to flow. End of report. If you look at the inflation spike that we lived through in the 70s, what caused it? Change in energy policy, too much money in the system, okay, and a government that was spending money like a drunken sailor.
Yeah.
Does that sound a little familiar? So the point is, and I'm not trying to be a wise guy.
To repeat. I get
it. Right. But the one thing you learn in life, and especially in the stock market, is stocks always go back where they've come from, meaning the cycle always repeats. It may have a different nomenclature, but it always repeats. So and I'm not casting any political finger pointing, but when the policy changed from energy friendly to energy hostile, okay, you had to know, because there's a reason why bacon was $8 a pound. Had nothing to do with the bacon, it had to do with the cost of shipping it to the supermarket.
Right.
And if you didn't start a year ago at least to realize that the 60/40 is not going to work, and the telltale sign for us, the the straw that broke our back, was when our bond hedges, okay, specifically the 1 to 3 year Treasury ETF, when the stock market was down, this was going down. That's not supposed to happen.
Right. Right.
And that's when we knew. You know what we've done to replace a lot of the bond needed income? We're buying great companies like IBM and Verizon that are paying over 4% yields,
Right.
and there's a potential for growth.
Right. Yeah. And there's been a flight to the stocks with the dividends, no question about it. And where else can you go? It's like, so folks ask me, why does money keep coming in? Why does gold not go screaming higher if we're so concerned about the downside of the market, the economy, or gold and silver? Why aren't more people getting into bonds if the concern is about the market going down? I said, well, okay, the bond return on the bond is well below cost of living right now, right? Cost of living in that claims to be in that 8%. I would venture to say that was a very kind number to use, because I think it's much worse. But but there's nowhere else to go in the world with your money, because everybody's down. All markets are down, currencies are down.
Okay, but here's the thing that I think a lot of investors, particularly the newer ones, are missing. Okay, everyone has gone to heaven on the Apples, the Googles, the Nvidias, and they're still going to grow. But why is growth now under attack because of higher interest rates? It really comes down to think about it from the kitchen table. Okay, now I am fortunate that look, I've got a good business. I don't have kids in college. I'm at that stage. But even I'm like, really, it just cost me $45 for a half a tank of gas. What about the average couple out there that they're both working, and they're making ends meet? They got a little bit left over, but now that they're spending 25% more on food and services, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
If you have a choice of buying more food or filling up the car because you've got to go to work, you may not necessarily be buying that new Game Boy or that new iPhone.
No, you're changing. I mean, we've already heard about the change in mentality of people thinking about different places to go shopping. Memberships are up at places like the Sam's and the Costco's, and their sales at Walmart and some of the grocery stores, big chains, are kind of losing a little bit because those prices have gone up so much. They're forcing people to look at different options.
Bill, a funny story. A very good friend of mine, a very dear friend. I mean, I grew up with this guy. Made millions of dollars. He's happily retired. He drives like a 15-year-old car. He doesn't care. But our joke is on Thursdays, it's coupon day, because, I mean, you got to be kidding me. I don't care. I don't care if you're Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. If you can save money with your basic needs, why wouldn't you? It's like we drink a lot of orange juice in the house. I'm not paying $4.50 for Sunkist when I can buy the store brand for $2.69.
Well, but there's so much dichotomy going on. Look at so the other night, and I pointed this out, I think last week, I got charged to go to a restaurant and order from them and pick up my food.
Yeah,
I got charged for that. Now, it's not a lot of money, okay? I'm talking about principle here, because my kids laughed at me. They're like, Dad, it was $1. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the principle that I got charged from this restaurant, but I could have gone to this restaurant over here and they would have paid me $3 to come pick it up. And
well, that's if you want to eat Domino's, but that's a different story.
I wasn't bringing up company.
I'm teasing you.
So okay, so if I spent $7, so a Domino's pizza is what, $5.99 if you go pick it up, and
right,
$3, so it's $2.99. I could have had a meal. Instead, I go to this other restaurant. I pay $22 or whatever, to patronize them, and they charge me $1, and then they charge me the tip afterwards after they charge me the extra $1.
Well, if you do the math,
double whammy.
If you do the math,
but Bill, do you foresee the blue light special coming back?
I don't think it ever really left, Coach. It's just I don't eat that early in the day, so I don't know if it's still out there. But
several years ago, I got a fine in the mail from the Illinois Tollway saying that I went through the toll 3 times inadvertently. Well, my battery went bad in my toll transponder.
Yeah.
They hit me a $60 fine for each one of those 3 times. So I called them up and I go, this is my car. I'm looking at it in the picture, but because it has National Guard license plates, it misread the license plate. And she said, oh, yes, that car's in the system. Yes, I'll take off the $60. I said, well, I'm also supposed to only pay half of the price. Instead of $1.80, it should have been 90 cents. So I should have $2.70 also coming back. She goes, well, no, sir, you got a violation. I said, I know I got a violation, but you just admitted that it shouldn't have been a violation. So, but sir, you did get the violation. So, and this conversation went on. I said, ma'am, it's $2.70. Just answer me one question and you can keep the money. She goes, what's that? I said, as a person, do you understand the logic or the lack of logic of what you're saying? She goes, I'm not a person. I'm the state of Illinois.
Yeah. That's the government for you. There's and we have a lot of these conversations nowadays. Unfortunately, where we did before, and it's pretty obvious. It was the same thing with me last week when I had my debit card number was stolen, had fraud. I go to the bank. They said, nope, we can't help you. You have to go home and call this number. I'm like, okay, you can't help me at my bank for fraud on my card. Okay. So I go and I make the call and everything, and they're reversing charges. They said, and here's a $200 charge, here's a $147 charge, here's a $300 charge, and here's a $10 charge. I get an email from the bank saying for the $10 charge that if they find out that I did it myself or approved the usage of the card for the $10, that they will come back to me and take it back for the $10 charge. I'm just like, can you not just step on your own foot or shoot yourself in the foot or, what PR,
it's hard
PR person comes up with this kind of stuff?
Bill, it's hard to talk when your tongue is underneath your foot.
Yeah. Well, and one of the old adages that sticks forever is penny wise and dollar foolish. And,
yeah.
That defines government, but it defines a lot of people also, going back to what Scott was saying earlier. We make our decisions based on the pennies and not the dollars. Well,
and that comes all full swoop to the financial literacy side of things that we talk about here all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That being financially illiterate. And Scott, you brought up the fact that, coupons, Thursday's coupons day. I got to be honest with you. I pulled the mail out yesterday and I saw the coupon booklet, and quite often I just throw that right into the recycle bin on my way back into the house. And today I'm like, nah, I'm holding on to this one. I got to start going through these things, because you're right.
Look, I got to share this story with you. Many, many years ago, and I don't really work on the weekends, but something was going on in the market, and I needed to call clients on a Sunday to alert them. And I called a client from Ohio, very wealthy guy, super nice guy, and his wife answered, and I said to her, look, I'm really sorry to call you this early and on a weekend. She goes, it's okay. We're just, we're sitting there clipping coupons, getting ready to go food shopping. And she kind of heard the pause, because we're talking someone who's like, literally 100 million net worth and higher.
Okay.
And she literally says to me, oh, because I'm very wealthy, Scott, I should pay more than 99 cents a can of tuna fish. And, the point is, just because you have money doesn't mean you suddenly need to become stupid about it.
Right. Right. Well, but people have different mindsets about money, right? I mean, this is America. We're supposed to live in debt. We're supposed to live above our means. We're supposed to have 20 credit cards. We're supposed to be stressed out, right? That's what we're taught. We spend our whole school career being taught how to take a test.
Yeah.
And then we get graded on it. So it's just memorization. Remember this until you take the test and do whatever you want with it afterwards.
Right.
We keep doing that all the way through education, all the way through college.
A friend of mine and his wife were middle income workers. They got invited, or they wanted a trip to have dinner with the CEO of their company, a very, very wealthy man. And his limo picked him up. He was in the limo. They got out of the limo going into the restaurant. And as they're walking in, the man stopped and picked up a penny off the ground and put it in his pocket. And they're walking in and they're having conversation. And the wife finally said, "See, I got to ask you something." He says, "What's that?" He says, "You're an extremely wealthy man, but yet you stopped to pick up a penny off the ground." He said, "Yes, I did." He pulled the penny out and he gave it to her. He says, "Can you tell me what it says on there?" She says, "Yeah, it says 'In God We Trust.'" She says, "Yeah, if it's got God's name on it, I'm not leaving it on the ground."
Yeah, well, we grew up with the old saying, see a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think my kids have ever heard that or know that one, or the younger generation. But we did, and I still do the same as well.
Same thing, especially $5 bills. I pick up $5 bills all day.
I want to share one thing with your audience because I think it was largely overlooked by the public yesterday. Clearly, we had a wonderful rally, which has completely been erased with today's action.
I was gonna say.
But welcome to the whiplash market. But amidst all the euphoria of yay, we're up 400, Walmart came out with their earnings and the guidance that they issued. The stock was down.
Yep.
And that sends a signal to anyone who's looking that if Walmart's saying that they're not looking forward with, a lot of happiness, they don't have a bright prospect, they're a consumer staple.
Well, they've been in the news this week.
I will tell you flat out, there are probably at least a dozen items, whether it's coffee or candies or dairy products that we will buy from because we can get it so much cheaper. Now, if Walmart's flagging that they don't think the next several quarters are going to be great, what does that mean? That means that maybe, just maybe, the R word is going to become a reality, meaning recession.
Right. Well, we can argue about whether we're in a bear market now or not. I would say yes.
Yeah.
But the powers that be won't say it for another year and a half or 2 years, just like the
Oh,
housing.
they're going to keep their jobs.
Yeah, they say the housing debacle was in 08, 09, or 2010, depending upon who you want to argue with. And I'm sitting here going, it was clearly in full steam moving forward in 06. And the signs were all there. It was already happening. So, we play with numbers, not we, but those who bring out numbers, even Walmart,
Right.
like bringing out their numbers. And when they're negative, they want to bring them out in the best of light. Walmart's been in the news all week long about saying how they have a great shortage of employees. Like most others, if you talk to any business owner, the number one problem they're going to tell you is employees. But Walmart was offering a starting salary of $65,000, for managers. That's a pretty
Listen,
that if you're going to be able to pay managers, and we don't look at Walmart people as the kind of people who are making $65,000, right?
no.
In the stores. So how does that correlate to prices?
Well, I mean,
cover the
you
cost.
are in a classic inflationary cycle.
Yeah.
You have too much money chasing too few goods, and that means if there are fewer people willing to take a job, well, you know what, Bill? If you are, a CIO, a chief, what do you call it? Technology, a CTO, I mean, chief technology officer, and 5 companies want you, it's a buyer's market. You know.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's
from your side,
it's a seller's market.
Seller's market, right? So the point is, okay, if the base salary should have been 65, and you have 5 companies competing, it's a good chance you're walking away with 85, 90,000 plus other benefits.
Oh yeah.
How does that get passed along?
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
In the cost of bacon.
Well,
and everything else.
But if you look at the dynamic, and this is why I tell people all the time, you've got to look at policy. You've got to look at policy. If you did some thinking on it last year, and you don't need fancy degrees and certifications, but if you just look backwards at history, okay, you had to realize that companies like Apple, luxury item companies, they're not going to be able to pass along big price increases. But the Procter and Gamble's, the ConAgras, those are the ones that people are going to buy those goods, whether or not, okay, the economy's up, down, or sideways.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, there's so many different things, but so as we look forward, what we're hearing, like from the federal government, the Federal Reserve, is that we're going to continue to aggressively raise interest rates, which is, again, I bring this up because I'm a Gold Greenspan fan, where we front ran inflation. We did not chase after it, and we are chasing after it. And I said, as soon as I heard this policy was going into effect, this is grabbing a tiger by the tail. You do not have control of an economy once you start chasing it. And in the way in which they've done things, by the first move they made was a quarter point. Well, that didn't help or do anything. And the second one was a half a point. Again, not really helping or doing anything,
right?
Because the front end and the back end of these 30-year, 10-year, 5-year notes and whatnot, they're not performing as it would be expected.
Bill, when we look back to the inflation that we lived through in the 70s, okay, when Volcker finally started to hit those brakes, he didn't fool around, okay? And this Fed, for whatever their reason, I don't know Chairman Powell, I'm sure he's a lovely man, but they were way too cautious, and I totally agree with you. What they should have done from the get-go, my opinion, they should have come out and say, here's the problem. We are stopping all bond purchases, or at least make a dent. Say instead of 120 billion a month, we're going to slim it down to 60 billion. Okay, we're going to start to take money out of the system. Oh, and by the way, we're putting on a half a point right now, and expect 3 or 4 more, because we'd rather have the pain quick and early and be able to take our foot off the brake before we go into a recession. I worry now. I personally think we will go into a recession, but my biggest concern is how they manage this. Will it cause us to go through what we went through 50 years ago, stagflation, which is a killer, absolute killer?
It does. But let me tie in this. So how does, and by the way, that was my opinion as well, talking about chasing and holding the tiger and everything, and how you're fighting this. But you get 2.5 million people quit their job in March. Now, I get that most people don't see and understand the market quite in a manner that you or I might see it. But 2.5 million people in 1 month quit their job in a volatile market scenario, rising interest rate scenario, an increasing cost of living scenario. Are we not thinking clearly? Or are we thinking that we got more free money coming? I mean, we do have elections coming up, right? We've got midterms coming. Why wouldn't they want to throw some more money at us?
Well, only in America can you see people on a $1,200 phone wearing $200 sneakers, drinking a $9 cup of coffee, complain about how they've been left behind in America. Meanwhile, there were so many job openings, and I don't want to sound like the old guy in the room, but I clearly remember as a teenager, when we were all about 14, you were expected to get your working papers. And it didn't matter if your parents were ridiculously rich, you were going to give part of your salary into the house. And usually by 15 or 16, you were told, listen, you have a few choices. Okay, mom, dad, what's that? You're either going to go to trade school, you're going to go to college, the military, or you're going to get a job. But when you're done with high school, you're not going to sit around like a bum.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I'm happy to say I still see lots of young people with tremendous drive and ambition who really believe in the opportunity that we know is the true America. But, what do you do with these people? Sooner or later, the government runs out of our money.
Yeah. I mean, but look at this. Look at the I think a lot of reason there's so many job openings out there is people don't want to go to work in those environments where those jobs are available. And I don't blame them, because everybody knows I'm an anti-corporate kind of person, but I mean, good Lord, you have to change with the times. You have to adjust. I mean, they say many of the 2.5 million people who quit walked out in March were doing so because they wanted to work from home. They didn't want to be forced to go back to the office.
Okay.
And under the conditions and stuff. And I can tell you, my wife is back in the office. She's back in 5 days this week. Normally it's been 3 or 4. But it's a concern for me. She has to text me every day when she gets to the office and when she leaves the office, because she's in downtown Chicago. It's not a great environment.
Yeah.
Right. And so
look, we had the same situation in Metro New York.
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in the 5 boroughs. I can tell you, as much as I love New York, I have no desire to take a ride down to Manhattan anytime soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing.
But nevertheless, I think I think a lot of corporations are bending, and that I think 3 days in, 2 days out can work. I know in our industry, look, we have to be able to supervise people. And, but we are being allowed that, if you have any associate advisors, they can work from home 1 or 2 days a week, because we have the systems in place. But I just believe with all my heart that the same opportunities that my grandfather saw over 100 years ago when they landed in Ellis Island, they still exist. They still exist. And I just think that, hey, if you don't want to work as a corporate soldier, fine. Figure out what you truly love and go for it.
Well, okay, great advice, with one exception.
Okay.
We aren't taught that. We aren't taught that until we're out of college. And then it says, okay, if you don't like what, chase your dream. You'll never work a day in your life, if you live in your dream. Right? But we don't teach that. How do I get there? How do I find that dream? How do I know? Most kids get to college the first day, they say, what's your major? A majority, if you're not a doctor, lawyer, somebody along those lines, dentist, they don't know.
And it's pretty confusing.
It's extremely confusing. Bill, I grew up with the same similar environment as Scott. I had working papers and I had the 5 boroughs. The working paper was my birth certificate because I was born onto a farm, and the boroughs were the groundhog borough, the gopher borough, all the burrowing animals that I trapped growing up. But the work ethic is the same. And it's that work ethic. I just retired after 45 years of coaching athletics, high school athletics. And I agree with you. There are a lot of young people out there who still have the drive. They just need the right mentor in their life to take them through. And that mentor isn't going to happen in our school systems because our teachers' hands have been tied.
I think that when you talk to a lot, I'm sorry, I think when you talk to a lot of teachers, they know they should be teaching entrepreneurship. They should be teaching, like I have two resources that I send to people for college, planning and stuff. And what Phil does, which is extraordinary, is he makes sure that the kid and the parents understand that, well, whose dream are we talking about? Mommy and daddy want you to be an attorney, but the kid really wants to be a graphic designer.
Right.
So we're going to put this kid through 4 years of misery, and then push him to go, or her to go to law school, and the kid's going to come out miserable. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the kid's going to be what, 28 years old and not know what they want to do. So Phil does unbelievable work.
It's that time of year, right? We have graduation, and all the proud parents say, "Oh, my kid graduated engineering. My kid graduated law school, and whatnot," and they're bragging and proud of it. But how do their kids feel about it? I mean, you might feel a sense of accomplishment as a young person who just achieved that status, but then you're stuck with, okay, now what do I do?
Right.
Where am I going to
go? My three kids, they're all independent. Okay. My sons are in a business together. My daughter is a musician and a songwriter. And, I was in music, so I can tell you it's a brutal, brutal business. But at least when she's going through a rough patch, we just have to say, honey, remember what we always taught you, what your grandfather and grandmother told you. If you get knocked down 8 times, get up 9. You get down 9, you get up 10. You just keep getting up, and it will eventually happen.
Let's step back a moment here. Go back to the teachers and whatnot. And I agree with you. I think many of the teachers are frustrated with being told what to teach and not being given opportunities to teach what they believe they should be teaching. Because I agree with you. We should be teaching life skills. We should be teaching decision-making, negotiating skills, leadership skills, communication skills.
Right.
And I agree with you. There are many kids. I work, I mentor in an entrepreneurial program at a local school, high school, and these kids are driven. I sat down with them the first time, and I said, do you really want to make this into a business, or is this kind of a program that you're going through to maybe get an understanding and learn more about how to build a business? And they all looked at me, eyes popping out of their head saying, no, we want this to be real. I said, great, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's go. Let's show you how much fun and exciting this can be. But they weren't being taught that part in this program. They were being taught, okay, he's a CEO, he's a COO, he's the head of sales. This is a product that, we want to put out there on the market. And there was no prototype. There was nothing. There were no plans beyond. They were building a business, but they had no idea of really all that went into it, because you really didn't have a product or a service you were putting out there. So you had no idea whether it was going to work, right? So you didn't have to fight and do beta testing and do other things to see if that product or that service was a viable business. So they were going through the motions, but they weren't getting the understanding of the true trials and tribulations of being a business owner and building something.
Bill, Coach, can you imagine how dynamic and how stellar a growth spurt America would experience if by the time they finished middle school, they were done with the English, this, that, the history, and they had half their curriculum in high school with HR management, accounting and finance, private equity startup, how to build a portfolio, how to manage risk. Okay.
Yeah.
Why currencies matter, teach them about the real world. I mean, I remember when we were in middle school, we had home economics. We had shop classes. Okay.
Yes.
I'm no tradesman, but I know how to use a saw, screwdriver, and when my dog dug up a patch of our lawn, I was able to reseed it.
But we're still there. I still fix my car. I still fix everything in my house. I'll do
Right.
plumbing, electrical, windows, doors.
I've
I'll
seen
do it.
your car. You have to be a college graduate to work on that vehicle.
That's
Well,
cool.
at
You
least
know
a
what? There's
computer
a
nerd.
really cool thing nowadays called Google and YouTube that kind of help you figure things out. But
Hey,
you still have to want to do that, and you still have to know that that's there to teach you and show you to do it. I mean, I rebuilt a '73 Triumph Spitfire, and that was before we had
love that.
Google and YouTube. And you know, you had schematics
Yep.
for electrical systems, and you kind of just had to
Right.
figure it out. You know, you pull something apart, yeah, you put it back together again.
Right.
Like what Deb just checked in, she's saying we need to support our teachers so they can guide their students to better understand what their options are. Life skills are critical. And the sooner kids are taught some of those skills, the better prepared they'll be. And they'll have a greater understanding of the options that are available to them. Deb,
Spot on.
Bravo, Deb. Bravo.
That's one of the smartest women I know, by the way.
I could not.
I know she's laughing right now because she is my partner.
I know.
But she's spot on.
Having been involved in the school system for as long as I have been, but not as a teacher, as a coach, I see the teachers who, they're teaching English, but they're teaching the kids English and using it in life.
Well, here's what we're doing, Coach. We're teaching STEM.
Right.
We're teaching 4 things and saying, okay, kids, you have to fit inside one of these 4 things. And you figure it out. But all we're asking you to do is memorize enough to get through this test so we can give you a decent grade to push you forward to the next one, to the next level. That's not I agree. Deb, I agree wholeheartedly. We need to support the teachers because they've been put in a terrible position.
It's making decisions, and they're not educators.
Schools are run by states.
That's a rabbit hole we probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, schools are run by states. We don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but they are run by states, and they dictate what goes on. So teachers don't really have the choice.
I'll give you a good example. Our local college reaches out to me every year for their business students, and I took an intern in this year who I wasn't going to take him because he was really withdrawn. He didn't seem to be able to articulate. And I asked him one question. I said, why do you want this? And he goes, I am the first one in my family to ever go to college.
Yeah.
I took that kid over. And let me tell you, the people that I did not take were far more qualified, far more knowledgeable. But I'm happy to say this kid put in the work. And now when I ask him to justify the portfolio adjustments, he could spit it out just like that. And I have no doubt this kid is going to be a star.
Yeah.
But that's the point. No one in school was teaching him any of this.
Well, you bring up another good point. Hire character. Teach the business. You know, you can't teach character. You know, and again, to support the teachers, that's a challenge that they have too, because these kids aren't getting anything at home, and the teachers are having to deal with more than just teaching STEM, right? They have to deal with attitudes. They have, you know, and by golly, if you're an employer and you have a bunch of employees, let's say you own a restaurant, you have to learn to deal with that too. What happens if your waitress or your chef comes in and they've had a major argument with a wife, or the spouse is leaving, or something happened, or they have the flu, whatever, but they just don't feel up to it? You have to deal with that.
That's right.
You know, it's in every business in life that occurs. But
back in the day,
that creates just a greater challenge that the teachers aren't there. That's not their role.
Back in the day when Bear Stearns was one of the premier investment firms in the country, it was run by a gentleman named Ace Greenberg, a Midwesterner who came from nothing, and built himself up. And someone asked him, I believe it was on CNBC, what did he think the key to his success he achieved at Bear Stearns was in terms of his personnel? And he said, we hire PhDs. And she looked at him and said, excuse me? Yeah, we hire PhDs, not doctorates. We look for poor, hungry, and driven.
Well, I can tell you how that doesn't always work. When I was down at the Chicago Board Options Exchange, there were a group, I cannot recall the name of the company right now, but they would only hire people with masters or PhDs. And they would walk around the trading floor as if they were the greatest thing to happen to the trading pits. Until we had this little, I guess we started calling them market corrections back then. In 87, the market dropped about 500 points in a day. And that group got crushed because what they learned about that group was in the trading pits, the markets don't say, okay, we'll hold on until you catch up. No. The markets just say, yeah, strap in your boots. We're going for a ride.
Oh yeah.
But these folks they were book smart. So they had to study things in order to be able to react. And that's great when the market isn't doing a whole lot like today where it's volatile up and down all over the place. So the market didn't wait for them to catch up and studied everything. It wiped them out.
Didn't they ever see the movie Trading Places?
Well, we love that classic, right?
Hey, we're in the last 5 minutes. You've been listening to Innovative Strategy with Bill Hussey and a special guest today, Scott Lask, and just a lot of great information out here today. We've got 2 minutes to impart all of your wisdom on the world today, Scott and Bill.
Always goes so quickly.
No
quickly.
pressure, though. Not at all.
No. What I want to impart, because it's worked for decades, is if you're building yourself a portfolio, and Bill, in his experience, brought a lot of the guaranteed insurance products, you need 3 pillars. That's it. You got to have cash, because if you don't have cash to handle life, you're in trouble. But you want to automatically save it because, believe it or not, you're actually increasing your net worth every paycheck. And the beautiful thing is when you get these market corrections like we're seeing, you have surplus money to invest when the market's actually on sale. The second thing is, and you can do this, it's not rocket science, build portfolios that when markets sell off, you're going to lose less. The tools are out there. Bill, if you get the inquiries, I'll give you all the tools that we use. Okay. And people don't have pensions. So behind Social Security, look at the guaranteed income realm. Find what works for you, because I can tell you when we get our clients close to retirement and they have 70% of their money locked down, a couple needs 100,000 to live their life the way they want. They know 70,000 is coming in no matter what. They will never run out of money. It's that simple.
Well, that's the biggest fear in retirement, right? Is running out of money.
Yeah. And most unfortunately, the FA model, I think, is very broken, because I'm amazed when I hear that, certain big name firms won't allow their advisors to even entertain conversation on the guaranteed lifetime income products. Like, you got to be kidding me.
You and I could. That's a whole nother show, Scott.
Oh yeah,
I think the FA industry, with financial advising industry, is a dinosaur.
Right, and to go to Coach's point, as he said about Warren Buffett, well, Bernard Baruch used to say, "I only buy my straw hats in winter."
Nice.
And there you go. That's I can't thank you enough for coming on, Scott. We always have
I
amazing conversations.
You and Coach, it's nice to meet you.
You too, sir.
And I hope that in some way that this, is given some perspective to your listeners, because strap in, we're going for that ride.
Yeah, we are. We've just hopped on that roller coaster, and this one's the newest, fanciest, fastest.
Keep your hands and arms in the right.
We're not even out of second gear yet, and we got 3 more to go.
Yeah, this is not going to be a 1 or 2 month ordeal. I think this is
multi-year.
This is a real deal. A lot of people eyes are going to get opened, and you know what? It's only money.
Yeah, but you know what, Bill? With people like you and folks who we know where the model was broken and we did something to try to fix it.
Yeah.
You got a better chance of coming out still standing, because we're getting bruised. We have some black and blue marks and scrapes, but we don't have broken bones and concussions.
No. And and you will survive. You will survive. But we all have. But Scott, again, thank you so much for coming on. You know,
my pleasure.
I have tremendous respect for you. It
goes both ways, brother.
You know, to bring another financial advisor on here and allow them their stage, I think that should say everything that I think and feel about you. So appreciate it.
Came back at you.
So, and I'll see you in New York, hopefully sometime this summer.
Let me know. Stay well, everyone.
Thanks for getting caught in the net with Bill Hussey and Innovative Strategies. Tune in at 12:30 today for the questions you were afraid to ask in church. This is Tim, Coach Papa, Bill Hussey, signing off.